U.S. climate envoy John Kerry is in Beijing, where he met with Chinese leaders earlier today. Kerry's visit marks the third time a top U.S. official is visiting China in the past month. It also comes as several nations are dealing with extreme heat. During talks, Kerry emphasized the importance of the two nations meeting.
China and the United States are the two most powerful economies in the world. We also happen to be the two largest emitters of greenhouse gases. And so the imperative of our two countries coming together and working and showing the rest of the world how we can cooperate and begin to address this with the urgency it requires is incredible.
This visit is also the former Secretary of State's third visit to the country in his climate diplomacy-focused role. Our senior foreign correspondent, Elizabeth Palmer, has been following this for us from London. Elizabeth, what's on the agenda for the talks?
First of all, this is a diplomatic initiative, part of the resumption of talks between the U.S. and China that we saw with Anthony Blinken going to China in June, Janet Yellen a couple of weeks ago, and now John Kerry. And it's all leading toward the U.S. hopes Xi Jinping and President Biden meeting this fall. So this is partly the U.S. showing its willingness, its openness to general talks. But as you said in the intro, you know, this is a period of extremely hot weather. In the U.S. and in China, people are frightened. They want to hear their government say what they're going to do to fix the problem. And so there's some pressure on John Kerry to come up with concrete solutions, deals, suggestions for progress. We haven't heard what they are yet, but he is hoping, we're all hoping, that they make some yards.
What do we expect that China is going to ask from the U.S. in the talks?
China makes 75% of the solar panels in the world. And the U.S. puts a whole series of complex tariffs on them, basically import taxes, and China wants them off, even more now because its economy is struggling. It hasn't recovered from COVID the way it wanted to, and it can argue with some justification that if the U.S. would just take these tariffs off, China could supply more solar panels to the U.S. and help the U.S. meet its own climate goals. So that'll be one thing. Conversely, the United States is going to want to see some progress, some commitment that China itself stops reverting to using coal. That it made pretty good progress in going to clean energy sources. And then when the economy was faltering after COVID, energy security became hugely important. And China has gone back to being a huge coal user and therefore emitter. So maybe if we do see some concrete deal, it will be on those two things, coal and solar panels.
And how likely do you think that is, that we will see any concrete agreements?
I think we'll see something, whether it's more window dressing than substance. We'll have to see. Xi Jinping has signaled that China isn't going to be pushed around. He said China will go its own way in meeting its climate goals. It says it's going to be at peak carbon emissions in 2030 and back down to carbon neutral by 2060. He says we're still committed to that, but we're not going to be pushed around by anybody, least of all the Americans, in how we get there. So the mood music isn't entirely sweetness and light.
All right, no time to wait on this. Liz Palmer, thank you.
Pleasure.